Hello everyone! Did you know that BlizzCon is only around a month away now? Damn, time goes fast. So just to let you all know, I'm not going to BlizzCon, but I did buy a virtual ticket, so if I get any interesting news about the new expansion or whatnot, then I'll be sure to let you guys know as soon as possible. I might even be able to get some material from BlizzCon itself, like pictures and stuff like that, but I'll let you know more about that in the future. For those that bought a virtual ticket, they've announced the in-game goodies that we're going to get, and I'll place a link in the description if you want to know more. Anyways, time for a new Q&A. Hello! I was wondering if you knew anything about Ravenholdt or their leader Jorah Ravenholdt. I also wouldn't mind knowing on why they're in quarrel with the Syndicate. Ravenholdt is a guild of thieves and assassins, and they see themselves as really good at their job. Jorah Ravenholdt, as far as I know, doesn't really have a story behind him. He was part of the rogue questline back in the day, which requires you to get a backpack and the key to open it, which gave rogues a really nice item for their level. Every class had a similar quest for such an item back then, which took you to Sunken Temple, was a really nice blue item, was a great questline, but I think they've removed that by now. Now the Syndicate was formed by Aiden Perrenhold. Aiden used to be a noble, and he was king of Anub'arak. When the Horde invaded Azeroth for the very first time, he betrayed the Alliance and gave Doomhammer and his Horde free passage through the mountains in exchange for the safety of his kingdom. As we know, Doomhammer and the Horde failed, and the betrayal of Aiden was discovered. But the Alliance couldn't just execute him. The nobles, they were already having a hard time working together as it was, and killing one of them would send a bad message. Instead, what they did, as a temporary solution, they put Perrenhold and his people under martial law. That meant that the Alliance, they invaded his kingdom, they put them in their own homes, in their prisons, until they figured out what to do with them. The second time the Horde invaded, they came for 3 artifacts. One of them was the Book of Medivh, which Perrenhold had stolen from Stormwind, and he had originally planned to use it as a bargain chip with the Alliance. When Deathwing and the Horde came up to him to get the book, he made a bargain with them. Deathwing would kill all the Alliance that was holding Perrenhold under martial law, and he would give the book. Once again, the Horde would be pushed back, and this time Perrenhold and his fellow nobles would be branded as traitors. They were kicked out of their homes, and they had to steal to survive, and so the Syndicate was born. So the Syndicate is really an organization of former nobles who, well, had a very bad leadership and were kicked out of their houses. Ravenholdt doesn't like the Syndicate because they saw them as lesser thieves, very bad at their job, just amateurs basically, and of course they saw them as competition. I know I could research this, but I'd much rather like to hear it from you, since you are my favorite WoW storyteller. What is with the huge wall built next to Stromgarde? I heard the trolls had something to do with it, but I don't know the whole story behind it. Thanks from Knaak. It's an interesting question, and honestly I never noticed that big wall. I did a little bit of research, but there's no real story behind it. Apparently it's called Thoradin's wall, and Thoradin was the first king of Erefor. The story behind it is that at first humans, they still lived in scattered clans, but the Arathi clan, they saw that the trolls were becoming too powerful and too threatening to simply ignore. They decided to unite the clans, and they did this over a period of 6 years, where they would kick the crap out of other clans, and then when they had conquered it, they would offer them safety in their own clan. This went on until they became a very powerful and vast army of people more than capable of standing up against the trolls. They built a great capital city and named it Strom, later known as Stromgarde. Eventually the High Elves, who had built the city of Quel'Thalas on sacred troll grounds, came to the humans and desperately asked them for aid against the trolls. The troll army was now so big that once they were done with Quel'Thalas, they would surely kick the humans out of their lands. Humans and High Elves, they teamed up, and the High Elves taught 100 humans the ways of magic. With their combined might they managed to defeat the trolls, and this unification led to the High Elves promising their aid to Thoradin and any of his descendants. In the future, the last descendant would be Anduin Lothar, who called upon the aid of the High Elves in the Second War. But that's a different story. I think it's safe to say that the people of Arathi, they built this great wall to protect themselves against trolls and other enemies, but there isn't really a story given. Hi Noble, I was wondering if you know what actually happened to the Nerubians. Why did Anub'arak betray them? This question is part of the story of the Lich King, which is a huge story. Now aimed at your question, what happened was that the Lich King was sent to weaken the world and make it ready for a new invasion of the Burning Legion. He started to build up his power in Northrend, and the only power fighting against him were the Nerubians. They were immune to his plague and his mind control, so they gave him quite a bit of trouble in the war known as the War of the Spiders. Eventually, Ner'zhul, with the aid of the Dreadlord and his undead, would win the war, and he would raise the defeated Nerubians to fight for him against their own brothers. One of those Nerubians was Anub'arak, who was their former king, and that's why they call him a traitor. He is now working for the enemy, even though it's hinted that he doesn't want to. In the novel Arthas, Rise of the Lich King, it's said that Arthas thought Anub'arak might not be loyal to the Lich King if he had a choice. Nonetheless, for the Nerubians, he will always be their traitor king.
I would be free of him.
Would you still play WoW if it became free to play? That depends on what other changes they would make with that free to play change. If WoW just becomes free to play with no additional changes, then sure, great, sign me up, a free WoW, that's fantastic, but it's also very unlikely. They have to run the servers, they have to run their customer support, and that means microtransactions and probably pay to win. If they would ever go with a system like that, where you for example pay $5 to be able to run a raid, then I would definitely quit. No matter how good the story behind it is, I wouldn't want to play in such a game environment. But that's just me. Why has Sylvanas Windrunner been ignored throughout the entire Pandarian campaign? Garrosh hated her before, but in his current thirst for power, he could probably hook up with her and get some Sha undead orcs to flex his power muscle. There seems to be some kind of hole in the lore right there. Sha undead dire orcs. Now that's just a very scary thought. However, Garrosh and Sylvanas, they don't really like each other ever since he called her a bitch, so I don't see them working together. Sylvanas wasn't much in the picture in Mr. Pandaria. Besides the siege, of course, she hasn't played a very big part. I think that's because they're planning a bigger story with her. Perhaps when Alleria returns, perhaps when it's time to return to the Scourge story, but there are definitely ways of bringing her story into the picture. You can't do everything at once though, and I believe they wanted to do with Mr. Pandaria a tribute to the old Warcraft 3 period, and in that time the Forsaken were not part of the Horde, not yet. So it might be because of that they might wanted to put the spotlight on Vol'jin and Thrall and that entire story, but other than that there are also plenty of hooks to go back to the Scourge story. I personally want to know what she did with that one Death Knight she pulled over in Ravenholdt, I believe. She pulled that guy into the Undercity, and after that they never continued the story, so I really wonder what she's been doing with that guy. Now these are 3 questions in one. Who created the Elemental Lords? Are the Elementals still enslaved by the Old Gods? And so I watched your video about Garrosh and you mentioned that the Shamans on Draenor could communicate with the elements. It's obvious that there are elements on all worlds, but is there any connection to the elemental planes on other worlds besides Azeroth? Does the Elemental Lords rule those elementals too? That last question I have a very simple answer, which is I don't know. So I sent your question over to Lorology on Twitter, who hopefully will have the answer for us. For those that don't know, Lorology is the very positive, very awesome WoW fact checker that Blizzard got in their team to make sure that the lore is on track. Now what I do know is that the Elemental Lords, they were just there. I think it's safe to say that they just spawned out of creation, and the Titans, they created the Elemental Plane. Now that information about the Titans is taken from the WoW RPG, which is not considered to be canon, but it does make sense with the rest of the story. When the Titans came to Azeroth, the Old Gods had enslaved the Elemental Lords and forced them to fight with each other. This created a bunch of chaos, which the Old Gods really liked. They are beings of chaos, they really like that chaos. The Titans, they defeated and banished the Elemental Lords to their respective planes. Pharazôn the Stone Mother to Deepholm, Ragnaros the Firelord to the Firelands, Elekir the Windlord to Skywall, and Neptulon the Tidehunter to the Abyssal Maw. That didn't make the elementals like each other, since they have been fighting with each other even after that, but it did create a bit more peace on Azeroth, and they are no longer enslaved by the Old Gods. It's possible that the elemental plane is connected to other worlds, but I couldn't find anything to support this. What I do know is from the novel The Shattering. In that book, Thrall returns to Outland and learns more about the ancient shamanistic ways of his people. In the book, he gives a piece of earth, of of Azeroth to Gordak, who tells him that the world is scared and is about to break. Which it would, since this was just before the Cataclysm. So it's safe to say that the elements at least have some common ground with each other. They can at least understand each other, even if they're from different planets. Like I said, I hope lorology will tell us what's going on with the elemental plane, if they're connected, and if the elemental lords rule all elements. I personally would love to find out. Your last lore video regarding Broxigar seems to have brought some attention to this character on different forums. I see a lot of people disliking this character because of the offer Knaak, not being what one would call canon. What decides that? Isn't all published books canon? By Marcus Hellstrom. The one who decides what is canon and what is not, that's Blizzard themselves. I believe everything they've published, besides the WoW RPG book, is considered to be canon, so that includes the comics and that even includes the War of the Ancients trilogy. The reason why people dislike Knaak and the War of the Ancients is because of several things, and you're best off asking them what the problem is with the story. What I can tell you is that War of the Ancients has changed a lot of the stories already known in the Warcraft universe, and it made a couple of stories no longer make sense. A very small but obvious example is Tyrande, her interaction with Broxigar. If she and the other Night Elves has seen an orc before, treated him with respect and battled side by side, then why doesn't she recognize them in Warcraft 3?
I sense something dark stirring within the forest, Chandris. It feels as if it's heading this way.
The greenskins who killed Cenarius?
Perhaps. Perhaps something more.
I can only speak from my personal experience with his books, and that is that I thought War of the Ancients was a damn good story. If you can overlook the effect it has on the rest of the Warcraft story, if you can imagine that it's an alternative timeline, alternative reality, then on its own I thought it was a great story. Other books written by Knaak, for example Wolfheart and Dawn of the Aspects, they are amongst my least favorite novels. Wolfheart is just very slow and it only picks up near the end. Dawn of the Aspects was very predictable, and the part that I was most interested in, the part where the Titans gave the Aspects their powers, it was very vague and very disappointing. It's like you're reading an entire story to get to a conclusion, and once you get there, it suddenly ends. It was very disappointing. It also seems like he can't portray a female character in the role of a hero. Tyrande, Jaina, Illyria, all of them just a woman at the side of a more powerful man who will save the day. Compare that to a Christie Golden, who is my favorite WoW novel writer. She manages to create a story with a female hero which pulls you through a roller coaster of emotions. Tides of War, Arthas, Lord of the Clans, Rise of the Horde, Thrall, all fantastic books. I can highly recommend them, and they're from Christie Golden, which, yeah, her writing style, her way of telling the story just really appeals to me. And with Knaak, yeah, sometimes it's all about taste. Let's put it at that. I know a buddy of mine who's also read Wolfheart and he really liked it, so in the end it's all about taste. Hey Nobble! I like your work. I'm not gonna say that word because I make it sound different. I was wondering if they've ever explained why the Goblins and Worgens couldn't be monks in Mist of Pandaria. Do you think they'll change that in the next expansion? Also, what class or race would you like to see in the next expansion? P.S. I agree with Vol'jin becoming the new war chief. From Rick Cox. Well, Rick, the reason they gave for Worgens and Goblins in the lore is that it would be impossible for a monk to train either the Goblins or the Worgens in their starting area. The Goblins, they lived on a remote island, pretty much separated from the rest of the world, and the Worgen, they were behind their Great Wall. That doesn't mean they couldn't fix it, and they might even do that in the next expansion. People now had a chance to use the old races and the new Pandaren, so I don't see a reason why not to give the Worgen and the Goblin a monk class. I would be definitely for this. They've made some very strange combos in the past, like Night Elf Mages or Tauren Paladins for example. If they really want it, they can definitely make a Goblin or Worgen monk. Definitely. If they want to, they'll just change the lore to fit it in. As a class or race, what I would love to see is dragons. I would love to become a dragon like Raffion or Ysera or Alexstrasza. Be able to make a dragon part of the Red Dragonflight and fight for life, or part of the Green Dragonflight and be able to teleport home to the Emerald Dream, or a Black Dragon and follow Raffion in his footsteps. I would love to become a dragon. I don't even care what class, maybe a mage, maybe just a dragon class. I don't care. Give me dragons. I want to become a dragon. Okay, final question. Hi Nobble, I really like your videos, but I was wondering how long you take to prepare each video. It seems like quite a lot of effort goes into your videos. Could you explain the process of making them? Thanks and kind regards from England. The time that it takes me to make a video, well, that really depends on the type of video. A playthrough of a game, like the Hearthstone videos, they take about double the time as you see on screen. So say I do a 1 hour Hearthstone video, that would take around 2 hours to make. This Q&A takes me around 12 hours to make on average. It's a lot less time spent on editing of the video, which I do with the other lore videos, because as you can see, I just use a background, show a couple of pictures to support the story, and that's about it. Most of the time spent on a Q&A video is making the scripts and finding the answers. A lore video takes me around 48 to 72 hours on average, and that's not counting the basic knowledge that I already have thanks to the novels, thanks to reading up on things. That's not part of it. Now I say on average because it heavily depends on how much video material I have to work with. The stories based on things we don't see in the game take a lot more time to make because you need to find or even create material to show the story, which as you can imagine takes just so much more time than just record the game and put that down in the video. Also, the length of the lore video doesn't say a whole lot about how much time it cost me to make it. Let's just make that clear. If I post a 30-minute video, that doesn't mean it took me that much more time to make it. Definitely not. I remember, I think it was Who Will Be My Next War Chief video? That one took the most in recording and production time and script time and research time. That one took a lot more time than expected because I first had to research the background of each and every character. Then I had to go into the game and try to find every character, which sometimes was on the Horde side, sometimes on the Alliance side, try to get a recording of that. Then I had to get that into the video, try to line that up with the perfect timing, of course. And then the little mid-section videos, that one just had a bunch of time behind it, but it also was a lot of fun to make. Now when I say these hours, you also keep in mind that I don't count the rendering time or the upload time. Rendering time is the time that my program Sony Vegas takes to put all the individual files into one video, which takes around 2 to 3 hours. And the upload time, well, that depends on the YouTube. I don't count that time because I usually do it when I sleep, so yeah, it doesn't really bother me. So yeah, that's about on average what it takes to make these videos, and yeah. The thing is, it takes a lot of time, but if you're, and this is a tip I give to everyone, I'm just going to answer another question, why not? Some people come up to me and they ask me, Ner'zhul, what could you advise me to go and do with YouTube, right? What would your tip be? Now my tip would always be, if you're going to do something with YouTube, is that you either have a love for editing videos, or have a love for the subject that you talk about. Now in my case, I thankfully like both sides, I love both sides, so that makes it a whole lot easier for me to do it. But if you're going to do this, definitely on a regular basis, then know that you're going to spend a whole bunch of time and a whole bunch of effort and tears and sweat into your videos, because that's what it takes. If you want to do this on a weekly basis, if you want to make good, proper videos, and I think mine could still improve, but for now they're good enough, then you're going to spend that much time. If you're going to do YouTube because you want YouTube fame or you want YouTube money, let me stop you right there, let me burst your bubble. That's not going to happen. Unless you get extremely lucky and you go viral. Other than that, you're going to need a lot of devotion and you're going to need a lot of time spent behind your videos before you even reach that period of time where you can live off what you make from YouTube. And somebody already asked me, how much do you make? Well, you'd never ask a Dutch person how much money they make, but let me tell you, it's not enough to live from. So yeah, that's the long answer as to how long it takes for me to make a video. I can't show you how exactly I make a video because that would be giving away all my secrets. Just know there's a certain amount of devotion behind it and I love doing it. That makes it very easy. And that's my Q&A for this week, guys. Thanks again for all the questions. I'll do my best to answer some more on askfm/Ner'zhul, because I'm a month behind now and I've been a little bit busy. For those of you who sent me Lich King related questions, I started last week on a script and I realized it would be easier to first tell you the story of the Lich King and then get back to all your questions. So don't worry, I've seen your questions and I'm going to do something with them. It's just going to take a little while. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. And until next time, guys. See ya!